Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a case that shook an entire nation. A story of two innocent lives lost, a chilling miscarriage of justice, and the unwavering fight for truth. This isn't just a simple tale of crime. It's a decades-long saga that reveals the terrifying darkness that can hide in plain sight, and the incredible bravery of those who refuse to let evil win. This is the story of Russell Bishop, a man who became a monster, and the two little girls, Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows, who the entire country came to know as the Babes in the Wood. The haunting of Whitehawk, our story begins in 1986, in the small, seemingly idyllic suburb of Whitehawk, on the southern coast of England. For the community here, life was simple. It was a place where children still played freely outside, where neighbors knew each other's names, and where an unspoken trust existed in the air. This was the world of 7-year-old Karen Hadaway and 9-year-old Nicola Fellows, two best friends who were as inseparable as they were joyful. On the afternoon of October 9th, their world, and that of their families, was shattered. The two girls, just out playing, vanished without a trace. The alarm was immediate, and soon, the entire community, along with over 150 police officers, joined a desperate search of the large wooded area near their homes, a place known as Whitehawk. As the hours stretched into a full day, the hope that had sustained them began to fade. The story gained national attention, and the public watched as the girls' parents went on television, their desperate pleas for help tearing at the heart of the nation. Karen's father, Peter, spoke to the camera with a raw, agonizing plea. "Come home, darling, please. Daddy's not going to tell you off. Just come home, please, now." Nicola's father, Barry, simply said, "They've just gone. And Nikki, them both." It was the helplessness in their voices that was truly haunting. As the search efforts intensified, a curious figure emerged from the crowd. His name was Russell Bishop. At the time, he was a 20-year-old local known by police for his history of petty crime. Nothing more than a bit of a joke to the people who knew him. But on this day, he was part of the search, walking with his dog, a seemingly helpful neighbor. It was here, in the midst of this community tragedy, that he had a strange and chilling encounter with a police officer. When asked what he was doing, Bishop told the officer that they were going to give up looking. When the officer insisted they keep searching, Bishop said something that would haunt the case for decades to come. "Well, if I find them and they're dead, I'll get nicked, won't I?" Just think about that for a moment. What kind of person, in the middle of a desperate search for two missing children, would so casually and so pointedly suggest that he, himself, might be the one to find them, and that such a discovery would lead to his arrest? It was a cold, self-incriminating comment that showed a mind that was already calculating its next move. Moments later, the search came to a devastating end. Two boys stumbled upon the bodies of the girls. The police officer, Paul Smith, raced to the scene, and Bishop, with a strange burst of speed, ran ahead of him. Smith arrived to a horrific sight. The two girls were lying on the ground, arranged as if they were sunbathing, their bodies cold as marble. They had been strangled and sexually assaulted. The innocence of Whitehawk was gone forever, replaced by a scene of unspeakable horror. Immediately, a murder hunt was launched, the largest in Sussex history. And as police sifted through the evidence, one name kept surfacing: Russell Bishop. Witnesses placed him near the scene, and even more damning, a blue sweatshirt was found discarded nearby, a garment that had traces of the girls' clothing fibers and ivy spores consistent with the wooded area where the bodies were found. When police showed the sweatshirt to Bishop's girlfriend, Jenny Johnson, she gave them the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. A devastating moment of truth that she couldn't possibly have known the consequences of. She said, "Oh, you've brought Russell's sweatshirt back." They had their man. The community, the police, and the entire country were convinced. He was charged with murder, and it seemed justice for the babes in the wood was finally within reach. But as we all know, the path to justice is rarely a straight line. The prosecution felt they had a solid case. The public was watching, and the families of Karen and Nicola were waiting for a verdict that would finally bring them peace. But what no one could have accounted for was the ultimate betrayal that would unfold in the courtroom. More than a year after the murders, in November 1987, the trial of Russell Bishop began. The evidence against him was compelling. The witnesses, his strange behavior, and the blue sweatshirt with its damning forensic clues all pointed to his guilt. The most critical piece of evidence was the sworn statement from his girlfriend, Jenny Johnson, who had confirmed the sweatshirt belonged to him. It was the linchpin of the entire case. But when Jenny Johnson took the stand, something unimaginable happened. She recanted her statement. She looked the jury in the eye and lied, stating that she had been forced by the police to sign the document and that Russell Bishop had never owned the sweatshirt. You can only imagine the shock in that courtroom. The prosecution knew she was lying to protect her boyfriend, but without a way to prove it, the entire case against Bishop began to fall apart. The evidence was no longer irrefutable. The defense argued that the killer could have been anyone. After 4 weeks of trial, the jury was sent out to deliberate. The nation held its breath, expecting a guilty verdict, but what they got was a punch to the gut. The jury came back and read the verdict: not guilty. Cheers erupted from Bishop's supporters. He walked out of that courtroom, a free man, with a smirk on his face, shouting, "I'm innocent, lads." His celebration wasn't one of relief. It was a brazen taunt, a cruel victory lap for a man who knew he had gotten away with murder. For the families of Karen and Nicola, the world fell apart all over again. Karen's father said he felt like everyone was laughing at them, as if their daughters' lives were worthless. They knew, with a certainty that could never be shaken, that Bishop was the killer. But because of a legal principle called double jeopardy, an 800-year-old law, he could never be tried again for the murders of the 2 little girls, even if irrefutable proof surfaced in the future. He had used the law as a shield, a cruel escape from the justice he deserved. In the months and years that followed, Russell Bishop, the man who should have been serving a life sentence, became a public figure, a victim of a supposed police conspiracy. He sold his story to the tabloid news of the world for £15,000, turning himself into a martyr. But his most sickening act was yet to come. The parents of Karen and Nicola, determined to keep the case from being forgotten, organized a march, demanding that the Sussex police reopen the investigation. Among the marchers was none other than Russell Bishop himself, a man trying to repair his public image by standing alongside the very families he had shattered. Witnesses said he was smirking, acting as if he had every right to be there. But his most vile act was a lie so despicable it had a devastating effect on an innocent man. In his published story, Bishop explicitly suggested that Nicola's father, Barry Fellows, was a better suspect. He claimed that it was not unknown for a father to kill his daughter. This baseless lie led to Barry's home being vandalized with graffiti calling him a murderer. He was forced to go on television to publicly defend himself, his pain and outrage heartbreakingly visible. Russell Bishop had gotten exactly what he wanted. He had escaped justice and tarnished the reputation of the very people he had victimized. The case of the babes in the wood was officially closed, and it seemed that a murderer had truly gotten away with his crimes. But what Bishop didn't know was that a new story was about to begin, and it would be written by a 7-year-old girl named Rachel Watts. A new victim, a second chance. It's February 4th, 1990. Just 2 days earlier, Russell Bishop had received a formal letter from the Sussex police, confirming that the case of the babes in the wood was officially closed. He was a free man, his past crimes legally forgotten. It was a victory for him, but a crushing defeat for the families of Karen and Nicola. But the universe, in its own cruel way, would not allow him to remain a ghost. On that same day, an hour away in a suburb of Brighton, 7-year-old Rachel Watts was out roller skating, her dad working nearby in the garden. She asked him for a pound to buy a chocolate bar at a local sweet shop. Because her family was new to the area, she got lost, and in her innocence, she did the one thing she thought was safe. She asked for help. She saw a man fixing his car on the side of the road and, seeing that he was a mechanic like her dad, she approached him. Rachel had no time to react. The man, a total stranger, snatched her off the street and threw her into the trunk of his car, where he sped away. Terrified, but with a sharp mind that a 7-year-old shouldn't have, Rachel looked around the trunk and found a hammer and a can of WD-40. She began to bang on the lid of the trunk and scream as loud as she could, offering him the pound coin her dad had given her. His only response, delivered with a chilling finality, was, "Shut up or I'll kill you." That little girl, alone in the dark, had a fighting spirit that would one day save her. She took off her roller skates, knowing that without them, she'd be able to run faster if she got a chance to escape. And when the man finally took her to a secluded area, her fears were tragically realized. She was sexually assaulted and then, in a final act of pure evil, her attacker put his hands around her throat. She blacked out, and he left her for dead. Rachel, a tiny miracle of a girl, survived. She fumbled her way out of the bushes, bruised and naked, and came across a young couple who, with a horrifying understanding of what had happened, wrapped her in a blanket and called the police. But in the hospital, in the interrogation room, Rachel left out the most traumatic parts of her story. She didn't tell her parents or the police about the sexual assault. For 30 years, she kept that horrifying secret locked inside. She later said she didn't talk about it because she was ashamed. Her innocence had been stolen, and she was afraid her parents would be cross because she had lost her brand new jumper. It is a heartbreaking reminder of how a child's mind processes trauma, focusing on a fear of disappointment over the unspeakable horror they have endured. But even without the full story, the police had what they needed. With Rachel's description of a white man with a mustache driving a red car, they were able to quickly narrow their focus to one man they knew all too well, Russell Bishop. When officers arrived at his home, they found him scrubbing his car with a frantic desperation. When they opened his trunk, they found a WD-40 can, a hammer, and most importantly, clothing fibers that matched Rachel's clothes, as well as blood and semen. The evidence was irrefutable. Russell Bishop was arrested. Justice. Finally, this time, there could be no doubt. Russell Bishop was once again in the dock, but this time, the evidence was overwhelming. Rachel, just a little girl, was asked to stand behind a one-way mirror and identify her attacker in a police lineup. Despite the fear, she pointed him out, her small, trembling finger a beacon of justice in the room. On December 13, 1990, Russell Bishop was found guilty of kidnapping, indecent assault, and attempted murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. The bittersweet relief in the courtroom was palpable. While he was finally behind bars, it wasn't for the murders of Karen and Nicola. As one of the parents so poignantly stated, justice prevailed for that little girl. But the unfortunate thing is, it wasn't justice for Karen and Nicola. The families of the babes in the wood knew that unless the double jeopardy law was changed, Bishop would never be held accountable for the crimes he committed in 1986. They continued to fight, tirelessly campaigning to have the 800-year-old law repealed. Their battle was a long and arduous one, but they never gave up hope. Meanwhile, Rachel, a victim of both Bishop's cruelty and the justice system's failures, was granted anonymity by the court, hoping to live a normal life. But the terror never left her. When she was 22, the phone rang with the news that Bishop was up for parole, and her carefully constructed life began to crumble. He was a convicted felon now, but a life sentence, in his case, only meant 14 years. Then, in 2005, a groundbreaking moment in legal history occurred. The double jeopardy law was finally repealed, meaning that with new and compelling evidence, Bishop could be tried again for the 1986 murders. It was a race against time before he was released. In 2013, the impossible happened. A cold case review re-examined the evidence from 1986, using new forensic technology that was not available at the time. A scientist tested a small piece of evidence from the original case file that was believed to be useless, tapings taken from Karen Hadaway's arm. And on those tapings, they found a mixed DNA profile, that of Karen Hadaway and Russell Bishop. This was the irrefutable evidence they had been waiting for. In May 2016, Russell Bishop was taken out of his prison cell, believing he was finally going to be granted parole. Instead, he was arrested for the murders of Karen and Nicola. He would face his third and final trial. Bishop, in a last-ditch attempt to save himself, claimed that he had checked the girls' pulses when he first found them, a lie that was easily debunked by an original officer's testimony. And then, in a moment of poetic justice, the prosecution revealed one last piece of evidence: sexually suggestive letters he had written while on trial in 1987. His true nature, his vile, predatory mind, was exposed for all to see. On December 10, 2018, 32 years after he committed his first murders, a jury took less than 2 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty. The unseen legacy. Russell Bishop was finally convicted for the murders he committed, a conviction he had evaded for 32 years. He was sentenced to an additional 36 years in prison. His life ended not in freedom, but in the prison cell he should have been in for over 3 decades. But this isn't just a story about a monster. It's a story about the unbreakable spirit of the human soul. It's about the Hadaway and Fellows families, who never gave up. They fought for so long that they had to watch a man mock their pain, but their perseverance changed a law and brought a killer to justice. They had to endure the agonizing wait, but in the end, they found peace. As one of the parents said after the final verdict, "Now them little girls can rest in peace." Another found comfort in a simple, human gesture. "I said, well, now she can go to her angel bed and go to sleep. She hasn't got to worry about anything now." And it's a story about Rachel Watts. She was just a child when she endured a nightmare that no one should ever have to face. For decades, she lived with the quiet trauma, hiding the deepest parts of her pain. But in the end, she found the courage to step out of the shadows. She built a beautiful family with a loving husband, proving that love can be a force for healing. By telling her story, she reclaimed her life from her attacker. She is a testament to the fact that you can choose not to be a prisoner of your past. She fought, and she survived. The case of Russell Bishop, the babes in the wood, and Rachel Watts is a powerful and unsettling narrative. It shows us that evil can, and often does, hide in plain sight. It shows us the terrifying consequences of systemic failure. But most importantly, it shows us the extraordinary strength of those who refuse to let evil have the final say. It reminds us that justice, no matter how long it takes, can be found. Thank you for joining me on this powerful and emotional journey. I hope you'll take a moment to honor the memory of Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows and celebrate the courage of Rachel Watts. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing you these stories of human resilience and the enduring pursuit of justice. Until next time, take care and stay safe.